Well, we are here today for session 2 of our data leadership training series, and we're very happy to have you. I know some of you joined us yesterday for session 1. We're very happy to have you back, and we're also happy to have so many new folks joining us today. We'll talk also later on about sessions 3 and 4 next week, so there's more to come. And also some recordings to come. So we will have those for everybody soon. So great. Thank you. Folks are still coming in. We are going to get started on our session today because we want to get going and have a lot of things to share with you. Again, we're here for session 2 in this series. And in this session in particular, we'll focus on creating conditions for data-driven decision-making. Right. So as we get started, we have a little bit of housekeeping for us today so we can all engage properly. And we're going to actually keep everyone's microphone muted today, just because we don't have breakout rooms. But we will actually be using the chat feature. And so on the screen, we actually have some directions for this off to the right. It says keep your microphone muted. You will just be muted, so you don't have to worry about that today. You probably don't even have the microphone actually on your screen, but you do have the chat feature. And we're actually going to use the chat feature when we prompt you today so that we can actually respond to what the facilitators are asking us to do and reflect and share. We had so many smart comments yesterday coming through our chat. So we're really happy to use that again today to communicate. And if you actually have questions, though, as far as the chat goes, we're not actually going to use the chat to ask questions of the facilitators. We have a different strategy for that that we're going to share with you in just a moment. Okay. So for the chat feature, though, when we turn that on for you, that's when you'll be able to respond again to some of the questions and prompts that our trainers have today. So in order to do that, off to the right here on the slide, we have the directions to select the chat icon. So that little kind of speech bubble shape, if you can see that. And that way the chat window will open for you, and that gives you a chance to actually type in those responses. And you're going to want to make sure that you're typing to everyone. Sometimes it'll say host and panelists, but we don't want you to just talk to us. We want you to share your ideas with everyone. So if you can make sure that that blue button where you're typing in the chat says everyone, that will make sure that we can all benefit from everyone's ideas today. So we do want to share with you actually the directions for our Padlet today. And the Padlet we're actually going to be using is a website that offers us the chance to share resources and post our ideas. And we have links in there that might be very useful to you. And so we're actually going to show you how to navigate to the chat. And we will be using this today not only to post any questions that you might like answers to, but also we'll ask you to do some activities in the chat today. Our presenters will direct you over here. So on the screen, we have the Padlet available, and the link's been dropped into the chat for you. We'll continue to provide the link for you as we need it. And the Padlet is organized into columns from left to right, and each column has been given a title or a heading. We have meeting information on the left that has a materials download link and our survey for today and things like that. And the second column is where if you have any webinar or technical support issues, you can always post a question there, and someone from our team behind the scenes will be helping you. And from there, all of the columns are labeled in order of how the presenters will share information today. And their scroll bar at the bottom of your screen will allow you to move all the way over and see all the columns as we progress through the training today. Okay. If we go back to the start and we scroll to the left again, we're going to show you how to engage with the Padlet. So we're going to look at the webinar and technical support column, the second one. And we have our cursor right now on the little plus sign that's at the top of the column, just under the title. If you click on that plus sign, a window will pop up. And in the subject space, you can write whatever your question is. And as soon as you type, the little publish button in the right upper corner appears. And if you click on that, that will actually post to the exact column where you posted your question. So that's how those little cards appear and get organized. But there also might be times where someone posted something and you would like to add a comment to their specific question or whatever they posted. If you use your cursor and click on top of the word comment, it says add comment. If you click on comment, then your cursor appears and you're able to type and just add on to the card that someone else posted. So if you click the plus sign, it takes you to a different window. But if you click actually on the words add comment, it's easier to add that in there. Okay. So when all else fails, go to the top of the column and click that plus sign and a new window will pop up. It's very easy for you to add in the information that you'd like to add. And again, we'll be using that to ask and answer questions today, and we'll be using some of the materials in the Padlet today for some of our activities. All right. And I'd love to actually introduce our training team today. So we're going to go to that next slide. And I'm actually going to ask Tacey if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Thank you, Julie. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Tacey Rogers, and I serve as the Director of Assessment Research, Evaluation, and Continuous Improvement at Solano County Office of Education here in Northern California. So happy to be here this afternoon.
Great. Thank you so much, Tacey. And Joe.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rogers. I am Joe Valero. I'm the Director of Assessments and Data at Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. Excited to be here and excited to see everyone this afternoon.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to stop talking soon so that Joe and Tacey can take over. They have so many great things to share with all of us today. So kind of to finish out our welcome and introduction section, we want to share with you the 4 sessions that are part of this series. As we mentioned earlier, we had session 1 yesterday, and today, of course, session 2. And you can actually register for any of the remaining sessions, either 3 or session 4, through the link we actually just dropped into the chat for you. And we also have this link in a couple other places. And while these sessions for the Data Leadership Training Series, while they actually focus on using California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, or CAASPP, and English Language Proficiency Assessments for California, or ELPAC data, we refer to both of those during our sessions today and thinking about how we can use data like that to improve our systems. Also important to know is that attendance for these sessions is not dependent upon the completion of a previous session. These are all independent sessions. So you're more than welcome to attend any that interests you, but we hope that you're here for all of them because we'd like to see you. Also, recordings of all of our sessions will be made available soon. They'll be posted on the CAASPP and ELPAC website for you later on. And so our training series, as I mentioned, we had yesterday session 1 that, again, that recording will be available using summative assessment data for understanding and improving systems. We had a really wonderful group yesterday, lots of smart comments and ideas shared. Today for session 2, we're creating conditions for data-driven decision-making. We're very glad that you're all here. Session 3 is next week, and it's called Using Data for Communication and Engagement. I'm particularly excited about the content of that one. There's even a data makeover happening. It should be pretty exciting. And then finally, also next week is session 4. It's a very unique session. It's our shared practice panel. And we have Moore Park Unified School District and Saugus Union School District joining us to share some of their data leadership practices in the field. So we're really excited for the ideas that they have to share with you next week. And so for our agenda today, beyond this welcome kind of housekeeping section, we will move on to effective local assessment systems and different information we have in that section for you. Also, mindsets and culture that support data use practices, and also some specific data analysis protocols. So we're going to be watching a video today. We're going to be engaging in the Padlet with some great resources that were part of your materials. You can also download them from the Padlet. We're going to interact with those today. And then we'll have just a brief wrap up. And we hope that you'll stay on a couple minutes with us to provide us with some information in a very brief survey that we have so that we can do an even better job bringing information for you in this series. So kind of to wrap up our section here, just like with teachers and students in our classrooms, we want to make sure we have clear learning goals for those who are with us. And so in this session today, we hope that you'll recognize effective use of data and effective local assessment systems, understand the importance of equity-focused mindsets and culture for system improvement, and also identify best practices for summative data use, or summative data analysis, excuse me. And then by the end of the session, we hope that you'll be able to play maybe even more of a leadership role in the interpretation of and communication about student data. We know many of you have official titles in this capacity and play this official role. And some of you probably don't have this as part of your title, but this responsibility falls in your lap. And so we hope that what we're presenting today will help provide you with information you need to be even more of a leader in that space. And before I pass it over to our trainers today, we are going to be using the chat for the first time. And we're hoping that all of you could share a little bit with us about what you're interested in learning today. What is your learning priority? That's the question we'd like you to ask. We have that actually posted in the chat for you with that reminder to make sure that everyone button is engaged and not just hosts and panelists. So let's share in the chat, what are you hoping to learn? What is your priority today? Yes, the Padlet link has been shared many times in the chat, and we will still continue to share it many times in the chat. So don't worry about that. We'll keep making sure every time we refer to it, you'll get another link. All right, learning priorities. So we've got how to effectively communicate data to staff and parents. That's a great one, so important. It's a major component of a lot of our LCAPs, so something to think about. Selena, you're definitely going to want to attend session 3. That's going to be really, really important for you next week. And we're going to talk about some of that today, especially with those data protocols and engaging our interest holders and educational partners along with us. So someone says, I'm ready to learn everything. I'm new to this position. Great. We've got a new leader in the space. Welcome. We want to think about connecting to our PLCs, using data to drive conversations with our teachers in particular. Very, very important. Closing maybe some gaps that we have. Maybe some of our different student groups are needing some different things. And so how can we use data to support changes in programs and professional learning and student learning? Improving instruction. That's always one of the top reasons, right? That's why most of us are here, to support what's going on in classrooms. New to assessments, trying to learn everything I can. Well, you are in the right space, and Joe and Tacey have a wealth of knowledge to share with you. So we are very happy to have you here. There's a wonderful responses in the chat. You guys are definitely in the right place. We are so happy to have you today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to your very special and competent trainers today who know far more than I do to share with you and start us off talking about effective local assessment systems.
Thank you so much, Julie. I am getting lost in the discussion in the chat and am ready to have one-on-one conversations with those colleagues who are engaging. I'm trying to keep up with your learning priorities, and I agree with Julie, you're definitely in the right place. Let's start with the exploration of effective local assessment systems. On the next slide, local assessment systems in order for them to be effective, they need to make use of data that's high quality, meaning that the data is valid and reliable. And so that allows the leaders to use the data with confidence and to make programmatic decisions. Valid is an ongoing process, and it involves large-scale assessment items being tested over time to ensure that the test measures what it claims to measure. Reliable, in the simplest terms, means that the assessment yields similar scores for students with similar skills. Another requirement is that the data should be fit for purpose. Basically, that means that the data generated from the assessments should be used in a manner that's consistent with the intended purpose of the assessments. And we see this with our state assessments, right? They're clearly defined, and we have specific use cases for each of them. Another example is the purpose of interim assessments, which is to provide evidence of student progress towards long-term goals within a period of instruction so that teaching and learning adjustments can be made along the way. This means that interim assessments are not to inform high-stakes decisions, but instead high-stakes decisions are reserved for the summative assessments to support. Finally, effective local assessment systems make use of data that supports equitable outcomes for all students. And so in this process, we have to make use of high quality data. And it's important for our assessment systems to contain and make use of that data. So we can't just have the data, but we have to use it, right? And in order for it to affect decision making, the data must be accurate. That means it reflects the reality of our organizations. It must be complete. The data must be relevant and present. And that includes the context of the agency, the context of the school, the context of the district. And on the Padlet, there are data protocols that support you with leaving space for including your LEA's context in the data discussion. In order for the data to be high quality, it must be consistent. The collection and storage and format of that data shouldn't be changing over time. The data should be timely. It should be up to date. It should be available. It should be accessible by those users across your system that need it most. And it should be easy for them to access it. When you think about data, the assessment data, it must be fit for purpose. And so we have to ensure that our assessment systems are relevant to the decisions that we have in the moment, in that school year, in that particular time frame, and that the data is used for the purpose that it was designed for. The purpose must also be then clearly communicated to your end users, that is the users within your system, but then also your students and of course their families. Our first example that you see on the slide describes a reading fluency assessment. If the assessment is designed to measure reading rate, then it would not be appropriate, it would not be an appropriate tool for determining reading comprehension. We would need an additional assessment designed for that purpose in order for it to help us make decisions related to student comprehension needs. In the second example, it's describing an end of unit science test that's not aligned to next generation science standards. If we need to know how well students are mastering standards, then the assessment needs to align with our purpose. This is an example of an assessment that should be replaced with one that standards align. Local assessment data supports us with equity, and it supports us when equity is at the foundation of our work and of our decision making. Leaders can support equitable outcomes for students by fostering some of the conditions you see on the slide: a commitment to and shared responsibility for positive outcomes for all students, data use for challenging assumptions and implicit bias, and that includes those that might exist at different levels across your system. When data is disaggregated to understand learner experiences and outcomes, when users of the data have an open mind to identify barriers resulting in inequitable access and outcomes, and a commitment to authentic engagement of educational partners in the data analysis process. One example of this comes from Wiseburn Unified School District. It's located in Los Angeles County. And what the district assessment team did was they built off of their existing knowledge. They were interested in exploring student writing scores on the Smarter Balance assessment. And they pulled student data to examine what students were doing well and to focus most where students most needed it. And so specifically the student writing response. So when you think of the summative assessment, that's a large pool of data, but being very specific about what they wanted to analyze was their first starting point. I reached out to the coordinator at Wiseburn, the director who led this work at the time, and she shared that 1,500 students, 1,500 test takers in the district, their assessment team found that 165 of them had a writing section that was either blank or the students wrote long responses that were off topic. They were off purpose. They weren't worth what the prompt asked them to do. And that's over 10% of their responses. So the assessment team started with student and teacher interviews to understand the problem. Like, why was it being left blank? And why were they writing paragraphs and paragraphs that were, in most cases, off topic? in those interviews, they found that students didn't think that anyone would actually read their response, and they assumed that they knew what the prompt was asking them, so they just started writing without careful review of the prompt and what they're truly being asked. The district then chose to focus on addressing student writing scores because there was already a belief amongst the teaching teams that writing was an essential skill that students should master. So using that belief, that anecdotal data, was their momentum builder to build on that. So they had the anecdotal data from their conversations, they knew about the teacher belief, and to that, they added that data point of student performance on the writing section. And that is what they used to build their plan, those pieces. In this case, looking at data revealed demonstrated success for this district with analysis of the writing traits. The traits specifically that the assessment is being scored on: organization purpose and development evidence, and elaboration for opinion, argumentative, and informative explanatory. This information allowed the Weisburn USD leadership team, their assessment team, to focus their intervention efforts very specifically on narrative writing and the conventions of writing. And so keep this example in mind because we're going to come back to it later in our presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Joe to take us through the next section.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Let me pull up. There we go. All right. Can you hear me? Yes, I see a thumbs up. Perfect. All right. So let's discuss the mindsets and culture we need to develop and maintain to support data use. All right. So let's start with mindsets. To create and maintain a culture that supports data use, we need to attend to the mindsets of the participants in the assessment system. We will share 3 mindsets today: an improvement orientation, a focus on equity, and valuing educational partners and interest holders. And we're going to go deeper into these 3 here in the next few slides. It's important that educators, educational partners, and interest holders adopt an improvement orientation when interpreting and using data. This requires leaders to help users maintain a stance towards continuous improvement by naming this mindset and expecting users to hold each other accountable for its use. Improvement models and professional learning opportunities can also support an improvement orientation. Along with guidance and learning opportunities, data users need opportunities to interpret and act on data to achieve agreed upon goals. This includes supporting them to meaningfully reflect on what the data are telling them and using data to make decisions that influence student outcomes. This is probably familiar as we see the visual right now popping up. Educators and partners may benefit from improvement models such as the Plan, Do, Study, Act, or PDSA cycles to support an improvement orientation to data use and their own growth. The PDSA cycle is an inquiry-based approach to problem solving that follows an iterative process. It starts with planning, then implementing specific goals. Then the results are evaluated for effectiveness. Finally, adjustments are made based on insights gained, and the cycle repeats itself to continuously refine and optimize performance. We honestly like to go over and think of it almost like one cycle's feeding into another, into another, so they're not siloed. Continuous improvement is grounded in the understanding that a system's performance is a result of its design and operation. In other words, have we ever heard that quote, every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets? So that's really what we're talking about here. We acknowledge that LEAs do not have control over all factors related to its systemic functioning. Part of this process is to identify where are opportunities for you to best effect positive change. What do you have control over? Continuous improvement relies on cycles of inquiry to support improvement. Consider the outcomes that your LEA system is producing. In a continuous improvement model, the focus is on understanding the root causes of current results. Data can be used to understand why a system is producing its current results, what changes can be made to shift those results, and the impact of those changes. And so that was on the continuous improvement end of things. Another bucket we were talking about was equity. And what is equity? And probably looks familiar to some of us. Again, we referenced this yesterday. And so once again, the second mindset that we mentioned on a previous slide earlier was the focus on equity. And so let's define equity for our learning purposes today. Equity is the attainment of comparably positive outcomes for all groups within or served by any complex system through implementation of policies, practices, and procedures that remove systemic barriers and provide the supports needed to ensure everyone's full and successful participation in the system. Equity exists when race, ethnicity, language, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, national origin, physical or cognitive ability, socioeconomic status, and other characteristics are not predictors of the outcomes for any group or the individuals in it. So now that we've had that grounding, let's get a little deeper. To achieve equitable outcomes for students, leaders need to support mindsets that focus on equity, and this includes placing an explicit focus on centering equity, actively interrogate bias and deficit thinking, engaging varied voices and perspectives, using data to identify potential barriers to success, and also taking data-informed action to provide necessary supports. Some data you gather may not be in the form of traditional assessment data, but rather may come from different sources. The role of educational partners in student learning is really important, and LEA should consider them as partners in collecting and interpreting assessment data. Educational partners can include parents, guardians, students, and other community members. These groups have valuable information to contribute that is not captured elsewhere. And it is important, to value and respect their contributions to understanding and making decisions about student learning. Collaborating with these groups will allow for their meaningful contributions in strategizing your response approach when appropriate. We will explore using data for communication and engagement with educational partners in session 3 of this series. I'm super excited about that one. I really want to hear some of those resources. And with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Dr. Rogers.
Thank you, Joe. Before we get started, in this section, we're going to talk about the data use best practices. But before we do that, we want to engage with the chat a little bit and ask you to think about the data that you currently use alongside your summative data in order to get a full picture of student learning. So the chat is being opened up for you, and the question has also been dropped in the chat. What other data do you currently use alongside summative data in order to get a full picture of student learning across your system? Feel free to drop in the chat your go-to data pieces, data points of reference. iReady, essential standards, benchmark data, combative formative cycles, CFAs, interim assessments, common assessments, benchmark diagnostics. Oh, we see IXL, STAR Renaissance, STAR 360 diagnostic, classroom assessments, intervention assessments, IABs, empathy interviews, one-on-ones, leveled screeners, school-wide growth monitoring assessments, MDTP, REN, STAR Renaissance, IABs, MClass, graduation rate data, A through G rates, etc. Awesome, good stuff. Universal screw. There's some ideas. Those of you who mentioned that you were new to this conversation, I hope you're taking note of the chat as much as I am, because there are lots of options being used across our from our colleagues in the room here. Kelvin screeners, attendance behavior data, discipline data. Wow, this is good for your notes. I'm one of those students who likes to save the chat sometimes. This is great. Yes, I echo Joe. Take some ideas from others. Keep them coming, because we'll keep looking. Joe and I will keep reading this. We talked about in section 1 that data generated from assessments should be used in a manner that's consistent with the intended purpose of that assessment. The data should also be relevant to the decisions that they're being applied to. Summative data isn't designed to provide a complete picture of student learning, so it's important to collect and analyze data, different types of data, multiple measures along the way to support you with providing the information that's needed to support student learning. In that example of Wiseburn, they included the fact that the district's assessment team did teacher and student interviews, and we saw that in the chat. Someone referenced doing some empathy interviews. The interviews provided more context about the data to explain the student's decision-making process. This is an example that we're talking about on the next slide regarding multiple measures. Multiple measures refers to the process of gathering information from a variety of sources for a particular, oftentimes very specific purpose. It's a best practice to use multiple measures in any context, and it doesn't have to be exclusively assessment data. And it could come from data that's gathered in a classroom, across the school district, across multiple school sites, a grade level. That is some of the things that you saw in the chat: survey data, focus groups, interviews, observation data, right? We're often doing those walkthroughs. That serves as a data point. On the next slide, we're talking about the categories of measures. So when you think about multiple measures, what categories can you consider? These are four categories that we have listed. Demographics, including students, staff, not just your student demographics, but don't forget your staff, right? School demographics, the community data, and community data could also include local economy data, social economic status of your community, geography is a big one. Student learning includes multiple measures, perceptions about the learning environment, student perception, family perception, teacher perception, school processes, including programs, strategies, practices, your hiring patterns, your retention patterns of staff. That's all about school processes. That adds to the contextual data. When we gather appropriate data from these categories, these measures provide information that can be used to improve teaching and learning. One measure by itself, it can provide useful information, but we need multiple different measures to help us understand what's happening over time. We need those multiple measures over time. And that gives us a more meaningful information and a full picture of the learning. So when you think about these four categories, what to you might be most helpful in making sense of summative assessment results in your context? Can you use the chat once more? When you think about these categories, what's most helpful to you to make sense of the assessment data? It helps you understand the assessment data in your context. Share in the chat which is most helpful for you of these four categories. School processes, right? That's a real one, Annette. I mean, if the principal is, not staying for the whole year, like this process of retaining staff is a big one, right? That reality. We know that that's real. Who's in your class? Student demographics, student learning, perception data. Yes, Trish, that carries a lot of weight. Perception matters. Attendance, enrollment, yes. Transiency of the population, absolutely. Demographics, getting to know your students as a whole, right? That's right. They're all interconnected. I couldn't agree more. Demographics, yes. And I'm thankful to see our colleague writing in the chat the interconnectedness of these measures. And that helps us emphasize the why we are leaning into multiple measures. School processes, training, that's right, that's really good. When we're considering specific measures in our research, right, think of this data analysis process as a part of our research. We're considering which information will provide a more nuanced picture of what students can know and do, and who are our students. These measures can look at high stakes and low stakes assessments, policies that can contribute to our influence over the data being collected, and evaluations of programs that the learners are engaged in. Consider what information that can provide a more nuanced picture. This is why multiple measures are so important. We're looking at which data can provide information aligned to the goal or the construct that we're reviewing. We're looking at multiple measures to identify a more granular information about the learning, identify and address inequities, to support root cause analysis, to identify barriers that may be contributing to the unequal outcomes. That's what Joe was talking about. So those measures are pointing to different causes, helping us further understand our scenario. There's more examples of data sources that can be tapped to provide a complete picture of student achievement. And the list that you see on the slide is not exhaustive, but there are some examples, and they represent data sources that can be useful to you at the systems level analysis versus individual student level. And so we're starting off our list with opportunity to learn measures. Opportunity to learn measures are simply those around qualified teachers, the status and makeup of our facilities. Are they clean? Are they safe? Are the textbooks and the materials that students are actually using, are they high quality? Are they relevant? Are they up to date? The coursework, the school conditions that provide an equal opportunity for our students to be able to learn. That's what opportunity to learn measures often refers to. We also have student feedback, parent or guardian feedback, teacher surveys. We saw that in the chat. Progress monitoring tools. Sometimes you'll see formative assessments being used. Sometimes LEAs and organizations will create their own internal progress monitoring trackers and data dashboards. Student work, diagnostics, interim assessments, student engagement, their engagement level on the assessment. Sometimes that's connected to participation rate, but there could be other ideas that your staff have around measuring student engagement. And then of course, the state summative assessments, course grades. There's a lot of LEAs in our county that have done work around grading for equity. And so when grading for equity is on top of your team's mind, your district's mind, course grades might be a strong option to consider to support getting that full picture. So let's look again at the Padlet. And we want to reflect on multiple measures to support student learning. And we're going to do a little activity here. The link to the Padlet has just been dropped in the chat. And if you click that link and look specifically at handout 2.1, 2.1 has multiple measures scenarios on it. If you pull that up, and you can choose one of the scenarios to read. They're short, just a paragraph or so long. And when you read the scenario, there are questions that follow it. So once you're done reading, look at the questions and then go back to the Padlet and share your thoughts on those questions on the Padlet. And you saw the demo, and my colleagues might be able to remind you how to use the Padlet. The link is in the chat, but you might take a moment to see what others write in response to the questions. So again, you're looking at handout 2.1 that's on the Padlet and reading one of the scenarios. You don't have to read both, just one, and answer the questions that follow. And we'll pause for a moment so that you can take a moment to do that. I see some responses popping up on the Padlet. It also tells us how many colleagues are writing away. And so I am sure that more responses will be posted shortly. In response to the question that says, how do multiple measures in the scenario create a more nuanced picture of what students can know and do? A colleague wrote a thought, having student created artifacts instead of just a multiple choice test as a result. That is a clear way of considering another measure. There's also another reference to some thinking around the planning, the data collection process, the time needed to collaborate, right? This is all essential, especially when thinking about multiple measures. And the reality of that planning is why data protocols can support us in making sure we don't forget a detail. Who's at the table, how much calibration time is needed. The next section, Joe's going to tell us about some good data protocols. I see another response coming through, student response journals. Empathy interviews give teachers the insight on the human side of their practices alongside the data outcomes that assessments would already give them. Emphasis on alongside. It's both. It's yes and yes. Right? Yes and yes. We're not replacing a data point. We're having it in conjunction with consideration of a data summit. If teachers are using the summit to reflect and plan for their own classrooms and instructions, it deepens their understanding of their own instruction and how and why specific student outcomes occur. That is so beautiful. It feels like poetry. Who knew that a group of data analysts would be poets? Student rubrics, portfolios, yes. We need to consider more than just one assessment type to get a full picture. You know, when I think that comment makes me think about Weisburn, Joe. And when I spoke to the director, she said, 3 years. It's not overnight. And we're talking about they were able to begin their plan it took them 3 years to build the momentum, to get the buy-in, to make sense of their data, to see the data alongside of each other. And so it's important to emphasize it's not overnight. And this comment on the Padlet makes me think of that. It takes time. But if we're committed, Joe, you talked about equity in the last section. If we're committed, like we can get there. I want to turn it over to you, Joe.
Well, no, I just wanted to actually build off of what you were saying. It's just one of those, I have to always take everything back to food. For everybody that works with me, it's all about food. And really, it just comes down to we honestly live in a crock pot. We live in a crock pot world. So a lot of the times we want microwave, results. No, it's really a crock pot world. So just think about that, right? We want something, it's going to taste better if it's long and, cook it for a long time, has time to marinate, go over, get nice and soft inside of a crock pot. So once again, crock pot world, not a, we don't want microwave results. All right, so we're going to pivot back to the actual presentation and stop talking about food. And let's talk about some data analysis protocols. So in this section, we will go over data analysis protocols that can be used to support the work we have discussed. As we explore the protocols, please keep what you know, keep what you now know about asset-based approaches to data in mind. So once again, as we're getting deeper into these, just once again, keep what you know about asset-based approaches to data use in mind as we're going through this. A protocol is a procedure for guiding a structured conversation using specific rules that help facilitate collaboration between participants. Together, we will explore data analysis protocols and how they can be used to support data-based decision-making. There are many benefits to using protocols for data analysis. They can help us stay focused, which is always hard when we go and we look at data, right? Sometimes we want to go down rabbit holes, but they can help us stay focused and work efficiently when analyzing data. They can also center equity through the inclusion of different perspectives. Protocols also play an important role by slowing us down, preventing us from skipping the inquiry phase and immediately jumping to solutions. We like to call that locally solutionitis, right? We see something and we say, I got it. This is how we're going to do it. Sometimes and if we're talking about it sometimes from a district level or, a leadership level, sometimes we want to go over and we want to spend the time to really go over and we mentioned it earlier, getting to those root causes, really going over and getting down to that root so that whatever we're going to work through, whatever we're putting in place, we're thoughtful, we're deliberate as we're going over and moving forward. So once again, really important to go over and have these protocols. Can we go to the next slide, please? All right. In the following video, we'll learn about the importance of using protocols to support data-driven decision-making. And then afterwards, we're going to have a quiz. I'm totally joking. We'll be reflecting into the chat. But we're just going to be reflecting on what we learned from the video. And so once again, please keep that in mind as we're going over and we're watching this video. And so once again, we're going to reflect on what we learned from the video here after we see this brief video.
My name is Liz City. I'm Executive Director of the Doctor of Education Leadership Program at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where I'm also a lecturer on education. When you've collected all of your data, you're facing a large pile of data. Sometimes it's hard to know how to dive in and how to analyze those data. One of the things that I've found very helpful in my work is using protocols or structured-based conversations. Especially when you're talking about data with other people, which is really the best way to talk about data, is to do it with other people. They'll see things you don't see. You'll collectively decide what to do next. But the thing is, you have very limited time in school. You may have 45 minutes for your common planning time, and you need to figure out how to efficiently use your time to look at data and get somewhere with it. So different sorts of protocols can be very helpful, even if it's as simple as we're going to start with, what do you see in these data? To slow yourself down from everybody leaping to conclusions and deciding what to do about the data, which is something we educators often do. We want to do something for kids. We want to very quickly leap to something that's going to be helpful for students. So we go from data to solution in 5 minutes. Well, that's not very helpful because you've skipped the whole inquire part of the data cycle. You've skipped saying, why do the data look these way? What are we seeing here? What do you notice? So often we use protocols that start with a what do you see? What do you notice? What kinds of questions do you have as you look at these data? What other data might we want to explore to dig into these questions some? And what are our next steps based on what we're seeing in these data? So something very simple like that can be helpful for looking at data. Another thing that can be helpful is before you sit down in your collaborative team meeting with those data, if somebody has processed the data a little bit, especially if there's number data, interim or standardized test data, can you move the data from charts and numbers to try to make pictures out of the data? That will also help us be more efficient. If we're looking at a bar graph, instead of trying to look at lines and lines of numbers, can we just look at the picture to try to see, oh, what's the storyline here? Whenever you're looking at data, you're trying to figure out, what do I see? What are the patterns? What's the storyline? What are these data telling me? And now what do I want to know? So that's really a strategy for using data. It's not too fancy. You don't need fancy programs necessarily. They can be helpful, but really just sitting down with those kinds of questions can help you work through data quite efficiently. Whenever you're looking at data, you want to ask the question, why? You also want to think about using data like you're a scientist, which for those of us like myself who were English teachers doesn't come naturally. But you want to think about it like a scientist. You're presented with something and you want to ask why. Why do the data look this way? So you might say testable hypotheses, but what you're really trying to figure out is why. So when you look at a set of data, you're going to ask the question why. A very popular protocol that comes out of the business sector is to ask why 5 times. You ask it once, why do the data look this way? And then you say, we have an answer. Why is that true? So I'll give you an example. We're struggling with students drawing inference when they're reading, a very common problem in many schools. So why are students struggling to draw inference? Well, we're not sure we're explicitly teaching inference. Okay, why? Why aren't we teaching inference? Well, we're not sure we share a common definition of what inference is. Why don't we share a common definition of what inference is? Well, we haven't really done professional development on inference. We've been really focused on comprehension, but we think inference might be different. All right, why haven't we done professional development on inference? Because we haven't allocated our time to that. And maybe if we focused on that, we could allocate our professional development time to it. So if you ask these 5 whys, you stop when you get to something actionable. A couple of other characteristics of testable hypotheses are, one, that they're testable, that you could figure out what data would I look at to try to answer this question, to see if we're right about this hypothesis. So I'll give you an example. It was in a district in
Great video. So in the chat, it's been opened up again. What are some of your key takeaways from the video? As you were listening, I know there were a lot of really great nuggets in there. In the chat, once again, what are some of your key takeaways from the video? Ooh, seen some already coming in. 5 whys, asking the 5 whys, 5 whys. Ooh, looks very popular, yeah. Asking why until you get to an action. Structured based conversations. Oh, a lot of them coming in right now really quick. My gosh. 5 whys, 5 whys. Collaborative discussions. Looking at patterns. Yeah, please, Tacey.
I think Melissa, someone wrote in the chat that says 5 whys and finding actionable steps. You know, Joe, I might think too, she's giving me an idea. The colleague is giving me the idea of modifying that 5 whys protocol and having the room decide, is that actionable? Like, of the answers, like the speaker in the video was saying, of the answers that are there, like, we decide as a collective which one of them are actionable. And if there's multiple that are actionable, what is more immediate, what's long-term? Like, I get excited about being able to kind of make the protocols my own for my use case.
I love that. Absolutely. Just because something is created one way doesn't mean we have to go over and really just be, for lack of a better term right now, be cookie cutter, right? Turn it into something that's usable for you. I love that, Tacey. Absolutely.
Can I say, Joe, that your example there was a food reference to that cookie cutter?
Yeah, we're gonna have food references the rest of the day. We're all gonna be hungry. You're all gonna want to go over, and the feedback is just gonna be, I don't know. I was in some session. I thought it was gonna be about data, but it was actually about food. I don't know. So, but love it. Think like a scientist. Yes, lots of great, thoughtful things added to the chat here. Yeah, playing food reference bingo. Yes, absolutely. We're gonna try to hit all parts of it. So thank you everybody for going over, adding your thoughts into this. I'm seeing a lot of 5 whys, and so in a few slides we're actually going to get to, hey, if you're really interested in, you don't have a resource for it, we're actually going to be sharing that with you. If you haven't had a chance yet to click in that in the Padlet yet. So love it, love what everybody is going over and sharing in there. If we can go to the next slide, please. And so we're going to pivot now to authentic data engagements. So, and I think this goes back to what Tacey was talking about earlier. We don't want to go over and just take things for what they were and how they were created. We want it to be organic. We want to be able to have those real authentic conversations. And so We often think about how we engage teachers in data analysis. Excuse me, how we engage teachers in data analysis and protocols. Um, and it's an effective way for us to go over and engage teachers. However, protocols can be beneficial for all interest holders. Remember to involve the appropriate educational partners in these conversations as they have information that is not contained anywhere else. Ask yourself, who has important information about student learning? Who is often left out of the analysis of and response to student learning data? What is needed to make room for new voices to meaningfully contribute to these conversations? And I'm going to go back once again to when we were looking at this chat right now, there were a few of us going over and reading what people were responding to, and there's different perspectives that we can all go over and add into it to get a more complete picture. Once again, taking the following actions will help foster authentic educational partner engagement. And so we can see all this on the slide right now. Remember, we want to determine who needs to be at the table and engaged in these discussions. Provide accurate, honest, and complete data. Invite them to tell you what the data reveals to them and value their ideas. You're going to get the different perspectives. And I'm really thinking about, I don't know if we've ever seen that visual of the elephant and different people that are blindfolded feeling the elephant, and we all have the different parts. But when we all put it together, we can go over and see the whole picture. Honor input and respond with appropriate action. And then support participation using structured processes and protocols. Once again, we want to have structure to this because we want to make sure that we're not going down any rabbit holes and we're keeping true to going over and analyzing that data and coming up with, somebody mentioned it beautifully earlier, the actionable steps, being actionable with that data. Be sure to consider the needs of your participants and the purpose for analyzing data when selecting and preparing to use data protocols. And this is actually my favorite that we're actually coming up to right now. So sorry, I'm going to nerd out with everybody. The 5 R's data analysis protocol. There are many data analysis protocols to choose from, and we have put together a few to share with you today. The 5 R's protocol, just like others, can be adapted to structure conversations at your site. Now, I'm going to really step aside really quickly. It's the term adapted. You're going to see that they're very meaty when you do get into this. And so even us locally, we took the 5 R's and we had a lot of our local districts come over and we actually used the 5 R's to go over and guide what we were, it was structuring our process through analyzing and then bringing to action data. And so once again, make it your own. Make it your own. Go over. There's probably going to be parts that you're going to pull away, bring it in later on if you want. Maybe you're going to have a more simplified approach in the beginning, but make them your own. And so once again, the word adapted is going to be really key with this one. They can be adapted to structure conversations at your site. This protocol is best used with teams of educators. So we'll share some additional protocols that can be used by multiple educational partners and interest holders here in a few slides. But once again, getting back to the 5 R's protocol. The 5 R's protocol proceeds in this order: research, analyzing student performance through the data; recall, considering learning conditions from the previous school year; reflect, connecting performance with practices, programs, and policies; respond, determining next steps by centering student learning; and then review, monitoring the impact of the responses implemented. This process really should be used to think about your entire system and the components that make up your system. Engaging in this process should support you in understanding and improving your system in ways that produce equitable, positive learning outcomes for all students. I wasn't lying, I promise those resources were in there. So let's explore some examples of data analysis protocols with an activity in the Padlet. In a moment, the link to the Padlet will be dropped into the chat for you. You're going to want to follow the link and locate the protocols. Handout 2.2, that's the 5 R's. Handout 2.3, 5 whys, which we saw a lot of that into the chat. So if you want to go over and have that actually in a hard copy, you'll have access to it. Handout 2.4, which is 1, 2, 3, reflect. And then handout 2.5, discussion stations. Choose one of these protocols and read it on your own. And then you're going to describe how you might use it in your local context by typing your ideas into the Padlet. And we really encourage going over, getting those into the Padlet, because once again, it's that sharing is caring. You might have an idea how to use it. And it was just like what we saw organically happen in this earlier, where Tacey saw something and she was like, oh my gosh, totally take that. This is how we can go over and, build upon that thought. So sharing is caring. People can go over and, really steal ideas from each other. Describe how you might use it in your local context, once again, by typing it into the Padlet. As a reminder, be sure to consider the needs of your participants and the purpose of the protocol as you consider its use. In the time remaining, we're going to come back, we'll do a virtual gallery walk, and then we'll look at the notes. All right, so I think, are we pretty good on time right now, Julie?
Yes, we could do about 10 minutes.
Perfect. All right. So, and I'm actually glad we do have these 10 minutes, because you'll be able to go over and get into probably a few of these protocols. But once again, as you're looking through these protocols, think about how they might weave into your system. How might they plug into your system to go over and really supplement what you're doing? And so it is 3:03 right now. The link to the Padlet has been dropped into the chat. Feel free, click into it, and then we'll come back here in 10 minutes and we'll discuss. So once again, 10 minutes, feel free. You'll see it in section 4, the data analysis protocols. How might you use them in your system? We'll see everybody back here at 3:13. seeing a lot of comments being added. I love it. Very thoughtful. And just a reminder for everyone, you have access to be able to download all of these protocols. And so one of my colleagues from San Diego County, those three dots when you're on the Padlet, she called it a snowman, and I can't unsee that. But she was saying if you click on the snowman, those three dots, you'll see a little pop-up option on the side, and you should be able to download the attachments. And once you've downloaded it, you can use it. You can use it locally, however you need to use it to support your system. Keep them coming. Oh, Casey, go ahead, please.
Joe, I'm just so excited about these comments. I feel like we're having a community conversation here. One colleague wrote about the number of questions that's in the 5 R's, and they were excited about the number of questions. I have modified the 5 R's protocol so many times to reduce the number of questions. And it reminds me of the point that you made around it being adaptive and us knowing our audience and what they can handle and logistically how much time we have. I just value the fact that we can make the protocol fit for our scenario.
Agree. I love that. And we did the same thing as well, where we took the questions and we stripped them down to go over and just really have less. And then we turned it into a presentation so it would structure what we were going over and talking through. And then we added in examples. So we actually turned it into a column. The questions on the left, and then here are some examples on the right side. And we tried to even move away just from assessments because it could be, you can use it for so many different areas, whether it's class absenteeism, suspension.
I'm thankful that you mentioned how you all turned it into a presentation. And that reminds me that even when we're using protocols, especially with our community members and families and students, that tools like that, presentations, posters, I've put the questions up on the wall so that participants are responding to the questions and they can see their language up on the wall being projected. I think that's so powerful. Joe, I wanted to ask you your thoughts. As I was looking at them, I thought the discussion stations and the 1, 2, 3 reflect, handout 2.4 and handout 2.5 might be those that I would be inclined to use with families and community. When I think about discussion and reflection, there's no right or wrong. It's just kind of whatever you see, right? Like your own reflection, and that makes the environment kind of conducive for all types of responses. Like I wanted to know your thoughts on that, Joe.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's one of those, we have a saying, oh my gosh, it's one of there is not the way to do it, right? Capital T, capital H, capital E. There's just simply a way to do it. There's multiple ways to do it. It's whatever works in your local context. Just exactly what you were saying. I completely agree with you. A lot of the times, a lot of these resources are created and you sit there and you say, oh my goodness, if I just turn around and I tweak it this way, these are my educational partners and I want to use it in this fashion right here. Or whether it's the 5 R's, we go back to the 5 R's. If I tweak it this way, this is this set of educational partners and I'm going to use it for, and this is the way I'm going to use it. So I completely agree. Yeah. And I mean, all of these, just the great responses that are coming in. So and Tiffany is agreeing with you on that one too, with the 1, 2, 3 reflect protocol. I think we're all of us are on the same page right here. Just love what everybody is writing. Remember, everybody, go back in, read what our colleagues are writing in there, because it's just a start. It's a spark. It's one of those you can go over, build upon. Maybe you hear something, you see something, and you say, oh my gosh, I want to go totally take that, bring it into my system. And actually now we have a lot more comments in here where I'm actually having a little bit of a challenge trying to go over and find things, which is great, right? So it's a lot of people love the handouts. Once again, you can download these resources, click on the 3 dots. You can download them. make them your own, tweak them, paste them into presentations. Um, if you're a presentation person. If not, if you're a poster person, we've also seen this done in posters where each R is a poster and it's around the different, different areas of the room. Multiple ways you can do it. There is no one right way to do it. Whatever is effective for you locally, that's the right way. That's the real right way. All right. Do you see anything else, Tacey, that you see popping out? Once again, wonderful responses that we see in here. Great way to get everyone engaged using the if I can read, discussion stations protocol. That was me combining the two words right there.
I see just so many different use cases, Joe. Colleagues are referencing using it with admin, with teacher teams. I want to add to the conversation students, right? Students can use a good protocol also because that helps keeps the conversation focused. Parents, I've done the poster as you described, Joe, with I did it with parents. One of our districts has an equity team. And again, post-its, they're writing, post-its on the wall, right? And it keeps them busy, it keeps them focused on ensuring that they're giving us the data that we need, their reflections, right? Sometimes in the environments, participants can go off topic, especially when there's a passionate point of reference, which is good. And we need their response to the data. And so it really helps us stay structured.
I love it. And to your point, it also, once again, keeps us from going down rabbit holes, these protocols, but it also prevents us just going directly to solutionitis. And I'm going to go back once again to the 5 R's. The 5 R's really forces all of us to go over and not just look at the data and say, ooh, that's interesting. It forces us to reflect on, hey, instructionally, what were some of our focuses this year? Or did we have some sort of initiative that we were launching this year? And it just provides those structures for us to be more thoughtful as we're going over and analyzing the data. And it's also not overly complex. That's the other thing. We want to be very cautious not to ultra process. I'm going to go back to the food reference, right? So what's not good for us? Ultra processed foods. Well, same thing with our data, right? We don't want to ultra process it. We want it to be more organic. We want these conversations to come through. And that's where these protocols are really going to help guide those conversations, not to go over and over process these things. All right, love it. Keep it coming. Bookmark this Padlet, everybody. Please bookmark it. You can always go back, you can reference it. You know the 5 R's live in here, but more importantly, people's thoughts, people's ideas, being able to go back and just steal that, borrow that, build on that. That's the important thing to me. That's an opinion right there. Being able to go over there and just steal those different ideas. So thank you everybody for participating in this. And with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Julie.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you, Tacey, very much. It's wonderful facilitation today. And thank you to all of you. Again, just like yesterday, so many wonderful comments and ideas being shared in the chat and the Padlet. As Joe said, the Padlet will be available for you for the coming year. It will be available for you to go back to. And we won't be continuing to update it, but those ideas and resources and the thoughts of your colleagues will stay there and be accessible for you. So we are ready to wrap up today's session. And we again just want you to thank you again for your thoughtfulness and your engaging participation. We really appreciate it and just happy that you were able to join us today. So what we'd like to ask you to do before we actually say goodbye is we're hoping that you can take these few moments we have left. We're just slightly ahead of schedule, just a few minutes. We hope that you will take those few extra minutes and complete a survey for us. Really about what you learned today. And we're posting the link in the chat that's there for you now to that survey. You can also use your smartphone to scan the QR code that's on the slide right now. There's also a link to the survey in that first column of the Padlet. So all those materials, links, and everything, the survey is there too. And we hope that you'll take a few minutes to complete the survey. It's about 10 questions long. It's actually very quick and easy to complete. But we really do look at every single person's responses. And we use those to really guide future programming and to hear things that are really resonating with you, things you want to learn more about, even, formats and the ways information is shared, all of those, all the ways that we benefited today. came from information and ideas shared by participants in the past. So every year, we hope it gets better and better, and we want to make sure that it's meeting your needs. So we really appreciate if you can take a few minutes to answer those survey questions for us. And we're just going to quickly remind ourselves of our learning goals today, and again, our success criteria. So at the beginning of the presentation, we shared these learning goals for ourselves, hoping that you as participants would be able to now understand the importance of a multiple measures approach to summative data analysis. I'm sure many of you knew a lot about that before, but hopefully the importance of that has been driven home today. Also, that you've identified ways to analyze data in collaboration with different educational partners and interest holders, and the importance of that equity-focused mindset and really establishing that data use culture with others. And also that you can understand really how to craft meaningful narratives based on or identify best practices for summative data use. And our success criteria today was that you'll be able to continue playing that leadership role in supporting a culture of data-driven decision-making in your local context. Again, some of us are brand new to this space, some of us have been here a long time, but everyone has important roles to play, especially in leading these conversations and taking the lead and supporting others to engage, especially as we talked about a lot today, folks maybe who aren't used to using a data protocol or used to looking at educational data. Sometimes we forget and think about just using it with staff and teachers, but as Tacey and Joe very expertly talked about today, our students need to look at this data, our community members, our families, right? The folks that we serve have a lot of important ideas to share with us about the data. And so some of the tools like the protocols today hopefully will help you to engage those partners and continue those conversations. Also, as we mentioned, we have 2 sessions left in this training series, both happening next week. And we are dropping the link in a moment to the registration page that is on the CAASPP and ELPAC website. That's also, again, where materials links can be found. And we will also be posting recordings of these webinars there. So if you're not able to join us live, that's where eventually those recordings will live. In a few weeks, we'll get those up and ready for you. But we hope that you'll be able to join us next week. Session 3, focusing on using data for communication and engagement. So really a continued conversation from what you discussed today and learned about with those protocols. Those were kind of some of the ways that we can engage and communicate and elicit some different information and perspectives from different people and in our communities. But also thinking about the role to play and how we communicate out and additional ideas about engagement and being as inclusive as possible. So that session is going to be kind of, like I said, a continued conversation there. And then again, our practice panel from Moore Park Unified School District and Saugus Union School District, they're going to be sharing some really practical ways that they've taken their data leadership roles and some of the tools they use and how they're approaching that in their local context. So lots of great examples and reflections from those experts that will be shared next week. So again, thank you so much for attending today. We are so very grateful. Hopefully, again, you can follow that link to the survey in the chat. Also, again, it's available in that first column of the Padlet. And we, again, thank you so much for your participation and your thoughtful comments today. Thank you so much.